Good morning. This is the Colorado Energy and Carbon Management Commission, and it is June 4th, and this is a Wednesday, and this is our first business agenda for the month of June, and we will start with the roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Ray,
Here.
and Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 commissioners present.
Good. Good to see everybody. Good to see you, Hearings Manager Thomas. Glad you're all with us. Welcome to the show. We've got 50 folks or so listening in, 51, as we continue to have people join us. We start with commissioner comments. So this is a stage in which commissioners can update the rest of us and our stakeholders with regard to things that are going on in our individual worlds as commissioners. Commissioner Messner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to let folks know that this Friday there will be a Colorado Produced Water Consortium meeting. This is an in-person meeting in Rifle. Our agenda is pretty full. In the morning, we've got a tour scheduled for consortium members to visit a centralized produced water management facility in the Piceance Basin area. We'll also be finalizing our deliverable 9, which is a literature review identifying toxicological and analytical methods for produced water treatment for beneficial use outside the oil field. This is step one in a multi-step process to look at ways to better understand the studies and the research that's been done currently around beneficial use of produced water and try to identify any research gaps or studies that may need to be done that the Colorado Produced Water Consortium could participate in. We're going to hear a update on the ECMC form development resulting from the produced water rulemaking from Kat Campbell from ECMC. We'll work on addressing potential barriers to increase use of recycled produced water due to restriction of centralized produced water storage and treatment facilities. We're focusing this educational piece on the Western Slope. On the May meeting, we focused a lot of our attention from a baseline learning standpoint on the Eastern Slope or the Front Range, and this will be Western Slope focused. And so some of the presentations that we'll hear are technical considerations when building centralized storage and treatment from Jeff Kirtland from Terra Energy Partners. We'll hear about the evolution of produced water management on Bureau of Land Management lands by Carmia Woolley from the BLM. We'll hear 2 different local government perspectives, one from Rio Blanco County and one from Garfield County. We'll have an introduction of the new ECMC Environmental Justice Liaison, Stephen Aruza from the Western Slope, and some perspectives on disproportionately impacted communities on the Western Slope versus the Front Range. We'll hear from Matt Sura, attorney for Western Colorado Alliance, on historical considerations for produced water on the Western Slope. And so that's a pretty full agenda for one day, but this will be an in-person meeting, but there will also be a virtual option. So if folks want to listen in that aren't able to participate in person, they can get the link to the meeting on the Colorado Produced Water Consortium website. So that's my update.
A heck of an update. Thanks for leading the charge on all that. That sounds like a outstanding educational day for everyone on the Produced Water Consortium. Others with updates. Commissioner Oath.
Thank you. As you all know, I've been, trying to learn more about and better understand a couple of the newly published health studies that consider various topics relating to health risks from oil and gas development in Colorado. Just to be precise, those three that I'm aware of are called Measuring and Modeling Air Pollution and Noise Exposure Near Unconventional Oil and Gas Development in Colorado. The second is Exposures from Oil and Gas Development and Childhood Leukemia Risk. And the third is a cumulative human health risk assessment of regional ozone and volatile organic compounds from unconventional oil and gas sites in Colorado's Front Range. So I've received information that's publicly available about the studies, and so in some cases that is the study itself, and in others that's kind of information that's a little more high level about the study. And then in addition to looking at those written materials, I have attended a public event about one of the studies and was able to hear presentations from the study authors, as well as some really good Q&A with others that were in attendance at the public event. And also I've been able to meet individually with an author of each of the other studies. And this has been very informative. And I really appreciate the time that people have been willing to spend with me. But as I have been reflecting on those conversations and those experiences, I will say that I still feel that as a single individual, a single commissioner, I'm trying to fully comprehend these studies and don't know that I yet have a full appreciation or understanding of what the key takeaways are and what that could mean for us as a commission to consider doing in response to these studies. So I would like to share a thought on something that I think would be really beneficial as a next step. So that idea is that we would put together a panel of folks, a panel of experts in this area. I'd be willing to take on the task of chairing that panel, and that the thought is that group would then meet with the authors of each of those studies, certainly the three that we're aware of, and could also explore and discuss with that group if there are others that we should be looking at as well. And then have an opportunity for the authors to present their study methodology and their findings, and have the group ask questions and engage in dialogue about those studies. And I think ultimately this would help me, and in turn, I hope all of us, more thoroughly understand the key takeaways from these new studies. And to help with that, I'd commit to an outcome or product of these discussions to be a report that I would prepare for this commission and would be publicly available, that would be based on input from the panel members and the discussion that the group had, that would describe at least the scope of each of the studies, the key takeaways from them, the methodologies, any limitations of them, and any remaining gaps or areas that could warrant future study, and bring that back to this commission for review, conversation, et cetera. So I wanted to share that idea. Mr. Chair, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Oath, and really, I think all of us appreciate your commitment to diving into the science as the Public Health Commissioner. I think that approach sounds very good. The panel that you're proposing, would you be identifying the right folks to be on it? Would they be kind of air scientists or public health scientists? I mean, one of the things that has always been kind of a bit difficult for all of us is, my background at least is not in air science or public health. I bring a different voice, but we would want to, possibly make sure that we've got the right folks to ask the hard, intelligent questions.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree completely. And, thanks for noting that, while I sit in the chair as, in this chair and on the commission as, commissioner with experience and expertise in public health, and have spent many years working at the Department of Public Health and Environment and working on those issues. I am also a lawyer by trade. And so, yes, I think that having folks who have significant public health background, have reviewed a lot of studies like this, and or have various perspectives and backgrounds in air quality and the subject matter that is the scope of these studies would be extremely beneficial to help kind of round out my thinking, and then in turn our thinking as a whole, to have all of those perspectives. So yeah, that the goal and certainly the commitment would be to get together a group of folks with that kind of expertise who have really representative and varied backgrounds.
Excellent. No, I think that sounds good. And, I would remind commissioners, it's been a while since we adopted our current rules. It's been a while since we've looked at the science that may have come out since original enactment of SB 19181. And we want to ensure that we are on top of current science. And I think this is an excellent approach toward establishing that goal. So I would give a thumbs up. Other commissioners with thoughts, questions, comments of Commissioner Oath, direction? Commissioner Messner?
Really appreciate Commissioner Oath, you taking the lead on this. I do think that we intended when we did the mission change rulemaking to allow some time to pass, but then to dive into any updated studies or science that's happened since the initial promulgation of those mission change rules. And so I think this sounds like a great step forward, and I like the structure that you've put together, and so I'm in support of that path forward. So thank you for being a leader on that.
Commissioners Ackerman or Cross, anything further?
Just second that.
Third. All right. Well, Commissioner Oath, you have tasked yourself with a mission. We look forward to your putting that together and your exploration into this. Thank you for agreeing to chair it. I think you're the right person for that. And we look forward to hearing from you in a bit. We'd anticipate this will probably take a few months to sort of dive into, get together the right folks, and then have the interviews and the panels and further explore other things. But maybe we'll hear back from you this fall. All right. I'm trying to look at one of my AAGs. Do we need to do anything more than just sort of express our appreciation to Commissioner Oath and let her move forward with that? AAG Davenport.
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, don't need to do any more than that.
All right. You are blessed. Go forth.
Thanks all. I appreciate it.
All right. Any other commissioner comments for this morning? All right. Seeing none, I don't see that we have a consent agenda. Hearings Manager Thomas, is that right?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. No consent agenda this week.
Weird. Okay. Then we'll move right into our first docket 240900236, an oil and gas development plan. The applicant is Bison Operating, and we will I believe we're going to recognize Sierra Falk, ECMC Location Assessment Specialist first. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Good morning, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Sierra Vogt, and I'm the lead location assessment specialist for the Bison Cartwright 24 OGDP. After the OGDP passed completeness review and the director's recommendation was published, Bison alerted staff to an error in the BMPs on the 2A, as well as in the cumulative impacts plan, in regards to the type of drill rig engines being used. Currently, the application materials read that the Tier 4 dual fuel engines will be utilized. However, Bison will actually be implementing Tier 2 dual fuel engines with battery assist. Should the Cartwright 24 OGDP be approved, staff will update the BMPs and attach the updated cumulative impacts plan, which has already been supplied by Bison, to reflect the correct drill rig engine type before final approval. This change does not affect the director's recommendation. Thank you, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions for Sierra? All right, I'm not seeing questions. Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
We now will recognize Brett Kavanaugh.
Good morning, everyone. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm actually not in my office at the moment, but you probably realize that. Um, I will appreciate everyone on the call today, everyone, all the commissioners' time, and thank you for the opportunity to speak for a few minutes as it pertains to Weld County's WOGA process for the Bison. One second, my notes are all messed up. For the Bison for oil and gas development plan. On July 31st, 2024, Weld County held a pre-application meeting for the Cartwright 24 location before you today. Attendees included Bison staff, Weld County staff, CDPHE, ECMC. Please note that within the director's recommendation, it states that Morgan County staff, CPW, and BLM attended the pre-application meeting with Weld County. Just wanted to clarify, these parties did not attend, but all invitees did receive copies of the meeting notes. The 1041 WOGA application was received September 24th, 2024. Weld County did not receive any public comments or applications for intervention on the Cartwright 24 location. The 1041 WOGA hearing for the Cartwright 24 was held on February 27th, 2025, and approved by Weld County's hearing officer. Final order was recorded within Weld County's clerk and recorded and published in the Greeley Tribune on March 12th, 2025, which creates a vested property right for the permit. The 2A comments were submitted to the ECMC and are included in the director's recommendation. Weld County agrees with the director's recommendation and fully supports the approval of this permit.
Thank
If you
you
have
very
any
much,
questions.
Mr. Kavanaugh. Appreciate Weld County's participation in our process this morning. I don't have questions, but maybe some of my fellow commissioners do. Any questions for Mr. Kavanaugh? All right. Seeing none, I think we're going to see you on the next docket as well. So we will bring you back at that point in time. Thank you very much for attending. Ms. Wazelinski, welcome. You are recognized. And to start your presentation, do you want to elevate your witnesses so we can get them sworn in?
That would be great. Thank you, Chair. We have 3 witnesses and they are here on the hearing. Looks like we just need
Mr.
Mr. Hogan
Hogan,
on camera.
Mr. Boudreau, pleasure is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask each of the witnesses to raise your hand, state your first and last name, and swear to tell the truth. We'll start with Ms. Gillen. You're muted.
My name is Katie Gillen, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer?
My name is Bennett Meyer, and I swear to tell the truth.
And Mr. Hogan?
My name is Ian Hogan. I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
All right, the swearing ins are successful. Ms. Wazelinski, the audio visual panel is yours if you want to share your screen.
Great, thank you. We'll get our PowerPoint up and then I'll get rolling. Get that. There we go. All right. Well, good morning, commissioners. My name's Kelsey Wazelinski with Jost Energy Law. And with Jamie Jost, we represent Bison 4 Operating LLC in the Cartwright 24 OGDP before you today in docket 2409-00236. We would like to thank Ms. Vogt and Director Kavanaugh for their remarks today and Weld County for its support and participation in the WOGLA process, and also ECMC staff and the director for their efforts on this OGDP. Next slide. This OGDP requests that the Commission establish an approximate 4,463.88 acre OGDP, consisting of 1 new oil and gas location for the development of 15 total horizontal wells in the Three requested drilling and spacing units for the development of the Niobrara, Fort Hays, Codell, and Carlisle formations. The proposed Cartwright 24 oil and gas location is shown on this map, which will develop 3 drilling and spacing units for sections 1, 12, and 13, sections 19 and 24, and sections 7 and 18. As stated by Director Kavanaugh, the proposed location is in Weld County, and the 1041 WOGLA permit was approved in February of 2025. The proposed location does not trigger any Rule 304B2 ALA criteria, thereby avoiding all sensitive receptors. Specifically, the location is sited outside of HPH and over 1 mile from the nearest RBU and DIC. Bison will develop the OGDP in 2 occupations and has committed to Tier 2 dual fuel engines for drilling, Tier 4 dual fuel engines for completions, Group 2 drilling mud, and oil, gas, and produced water takeaway. There are 2 COAs within the director recommendation regarding updated reference area photos and an updated waste management plan if necessary due to the addition of waste disposal facilities. Bison agrees to both of these COAs. And finally, Bison has complied with all notice requirements for the Cartwright 24 OGDP. No formal petitions were filed and no public comments were received on the Form 2A. I'll now turn it over to Katie Gillen to continue the presentation.
Thanks, Kelsey. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and thank you for your time and attention to hear our application. I am recovering from a cold and may need to take an occasional break to rehydrate, so thank you for your patience there. I'd like to start by introducing myself for the record. My name is Katie Gillen. I am the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and EHS at Bison. I am here to present our oil and gas development plan for the Cartwright 24 and to answer any questions you may have to the best of my ability. Also present with me today is Ian Hogan, Bison's Executive Vice President of Exploration and Geology, and Bennett Meyer, Land Manager at Bison. Next slide. Here is a summary of our permitting timeline for this application. The 1041 WOGLA pre-application meeting for the location was held with Weld County on May 29th, 2024. ECMC expressed no opposition to the proposed location. CPW and CDPHE were notified and invited, but did not participate in the pre-application meeting. The WOGLA for the location was approved on February 27th, 2025, and there was no public comment received. Bison received completeness determination for the OGDP on February 21st, and the director's recommendation for approval of the application on March 19th. CDPHE consultation pursuant to Rule 309F was not required, and CDPHE did not request a consultation. CPW consultation pursuant to Rule 309E was not required, and CPW did not request a consultation. There was no public comment received on the OGDP or 2A application. Next slide. 3 drilling and spacing units will be developed, covering approximately 4,463.88 acres of mineral lands from this single location. It will include a total of 15 horizontal wells, 6 3-mile lateral wells drilled south to north in sections 1, 12, and 13, and 4 2-mile lateral wells drilled west to east in sections 19 and 24, and 5 2-mile lateral wells drilled south to north in sections 7 and 18. Next slide. We have included a map depicting cultural features under Rule 304B2 to highlight the very remote nature of this location and how Bison cited this location to best avoid impacts, and all criteria and sensitive receptors are well over a mile away from this path. The nearest high priority habitat is over 2,300 feet away from the location to the north. It is located in a remote area of unincorporated Weld County. No alternative location criteria apply to this location. There are no residential building units, high occupancies building units, schools, or disproportionately impacted communities, and all are well over a mile away from the location. The Cartwright 24 also provides ideal access to the underlying minerals as well as existing pipeline operations and has close access to Weld County Road 89, reducing and minimizing the additional surface disturbance needed for the access road. This location allows us to maximize our mineral development and minimize surface impacts, as Bison will develop a 4,480 acre DSU and 15 wells from just 18 acres of surface disturbance during development and long-term 9.87 acres after interim reclamation. Next slide. This is an overview of our haul route. Vehicles will travel west from the location on Highway 34 until they reach Weld County Road 87. Our siting rationale for the haul route is because it avoids all towns, school facilities, future school facilities, and child care centers. Some of Bison's traffic reduction measures will include oil, gas, and water pipeline takeaway, and the facility will be equipped with automation for remote monitoring. Next slide. Bison evaluated and considered all key cultural and environmental features to avoid, minimize, and mitigate impacts when selecting the Cartwright 24 surface location. As such, none of Rule 304B, alternative location siting analysis criteria, apply to the location, and no ALA is required. During the Weld County pre-application meeting, 3 alternative locations were reviewed, and none identified offered meaningful reduction in impacts or operational benefits in comparison to the proposed location. There are no residential building units, schools, childcare facilities within 2,000 feet. The location is sited outside of high priority habitat, and there is no disproportionately impacted community within 2,000 feet. Additionally, the surface location selected minimizes drainage and topographical challenges, which allows us to minimize the surface disturbance required for the pad. Finally, Bison has an executed surface use agreement with the landowner. Next slide. The disturbed area during the construction phase will include 18 acres. And after interim reclamation, the pad will be 9.87 acres. The site will utilize an existing access road, and the access will be off Weld County Road 89. The production facility will include 15 new wells, 9 2-mile lateral wells, 6 3-mile lateral wells, and 4 2-mile lateral wells. The location will be connected to oil, gas, and produced water pipeline. There will be 6 oil tanks and 6 produced water tanks. The storage tanks will be equipped with vapor capture control design, which captures emissions 100% during operations. Next slide. Bison will develop the Cartwright DSU OGDP in 2 occupations. Bison has worked to consolidate the development of these 3 DSUs into a single location, minimizing the surface disturbance required. However, this area of the basin is untested from a geologic perspective, and Bison will need to obtain test data to confirm the development design for the remaining wells in the DSU and DSUs. As such, plans to develop the DSUs in 2 occupations in accordance with the schedule shown here. The first occupation will commence in February of 2026, and production will come online July of 2026. operations will follow consecutively. The second occupation will commence in July of 2027, and production will come online November of 2027. And this will conclude full development of the DSU. Next slide. Bison has included best management practices to avoid, minimize, and mitigate impacts during drilling and completions, and these will include a Tier 2 natural gas dual fuel engines with battery assist. I will note for commissioners, Bison is over compliant by 42% with NOx intensity requirements. We will also use closed loop pitless system for drilling. We will utilize Tier 4 engines for completions. We'll have freshwater storage on site in an MLVT, and it will be delivered to the site via lay flat lines, which will further reduce truck traffic associated with freshwater hauling. Next slide. Bison has chosen to use Group 2 drilling, oil-based drilling muds for this location. Bison has taken a holistic approach to evaluating the use of Group 2 oil-based muds versus Group 3 synthetic-based muds to best avoid and minimize impacts. We believe that there is an appropriate use case for each drilling fluid based on the siting of the location and the nearby receptors. Both Group 2 and Group 3 drilling muds, oil-based muds and synthetic drilling muds, are considered non-aqueous based fluids and must properly be disposed of. Group 3 drilling mud was developed for the use offshore where closed loop systems and mud recycling is not readily available as it is in land operations. Bison has included here our evaluation and comparison of synthetic drilling mud, which meets the International Oil and Gas Petroleum Standard for Group 3 drilling mud, and the low aromatic content oil-based drilling mud that meets the IOPG standard for Group 2. In Bison's operations in the DJ, we have found the following operational differences between oil-based muds and synthetic-based muds. Using oil-based mud, Bison has seen faster drilling times, primarily due to the increased rate of penetration, how quickly the drill bit moves through the rock, and greater drilling efficiency due to the lower mechanical specific energy. Bison's primary evaluation of OBM and why it outperforms synthetic-based muds, oil-based muds, the higher rate of penetration allows for faster drilling times and reduces, excuse me, the higher rate of penetration and faster drilling times. The lower mechanical specific energy, which is the energy required to move the volume of rock, reduces equipment wear, fuel usage, and the risk of stuck pipe and torque stalls. Additionally, with the closed loop system, mud recycling, and effective cuttings management, this mitigates associated impacts with spill and odor from Group 2 drilling muds. Of wells drilled with Group 2, Bison averaged 3.28 days to total depth of 16,826.8 feet, which is approximately 3 miles. And of wells drilled with Group 3 synthetic-based muds, Bison averaged 4.55 days to reach total depth at 15,684 feet, which is approximately 2.97 miles to total depth. Bison has seen through our development of wells drilled with oil-based mud, over 1,100 feet deeper and still finished 1.27 days faster on average. One other operational benefit is that oil-based mud has a lower mechanical specific energy. In other words, just to explain this a little bit further, that's the energy required to drill through the per volume of rock, which results in reduced equipment wear, and as I had referred to earlier, reduced fuel usage, and therefore lower emissions. Bison believes that the operational efficiency achieved with oil-based mud versus synthetic-based mud can achieve overall emissions reductions associated with longer drilling durations and increased drilling efficiency. The entrained hydrocarbons in drill cuttings of both oil-based mud and synthetic-based muds is considered the same, and therefore no substantive difference in ozone criteria pollutant emissions as it relates to the, or there's no difference in the ozone criteria pollutant emissions. In other words, the calculation methodology approved by both EPA and CDPHE for both oil-based muds and synthetic-based muds is the same. Additionally, the management of the mud requires more precision, of synthetic-based muds requires more precision and logistics, as well as more on-site chemical storage and trucking to maintain. Bison aims to reduce trucking, and therefore oil-based muds allows us to do that. Next slide. Bison has taken a holistic review of our use of oil-based mud and synthetic-based mud to best minimize and mitigate impacts for the Cartwright 24 location. We have found that wells drilled with oil-based mud had a relative rate of penetration efficiency of 49% faster, saving us 1.27 days of drilling versus those drilled with synthetic-based drilling mud. Bison aims to reduce our non-productive time and drilling durations and to reduce and minimize impacts during the occupation for ozone criteria pollutants at this location. Additionally, shorter durations of drilling will result in reductions in noise, light, truck traffic associated during the drilling phase. Bison believes that achieving higher drilling efficiency coupled with the closed loop mud recycling system is most protective for public health, welfare, safety, and the environment for this location. Bison has set multiple fastest drilling times in the basin with oil-based mud. We recently set the fastest drilling record in the basin at 640 feet per hour. So to put this in context of the well was drilled 17,550 feet in just 37 hours. For these reasons, we believe that drilling with oil-based mud is more protective. Additionally, this location has no residential building units and is outside of high priority habitat, and there are no odor concerns for this location. Next slide. During the production phase, Bison has agreed to the following best management practices. Oil, gas, and produced water pipeline will be connected to the production facility. It will be equipped with a LACT system. Tank vapor recovery will be installed on tanks, which provides 100% tank vapor capture control. Bison will also utilize our modernized flowback and will direct flowback emissions directly to the production facility, where those emissions will be captured and controlled. Next slide. The Cartwright location is sited wholly outside of high priority habitat. The access road is also sited outside of high priority habitat, and the nearest high priority habitat is 2,300 feet away from the location. CPW was invited to the pre-application meeting, but did not attend. CPW also did not request consultation for this location. Bison has implemented or will implement the following BMPs to reduce impacts on wildlife. Quiet frac fleet reduces noise, and three-phase pipeline will reduce truck traffic. Next slide. Given the very remote nature of this location and there are no nearby receptors, Bison has requested a lesser area exemption for the noise mitigation plan. Pursuant to Rule 304D, the director has granted the exception on October 29th, 2024 for the following reasons. The nearest residential building unit is well over a mile away from the location. And the location is not within high priority habitat. Additionally, Bison has agreed to orienting the equipment within the proposed location to reduce potential noise during pre-production and production activities. Staff has concluded that the distance from receptors and Bison's commitment to equipment orientation are protective of public health, safety, and welfare. Next slide. Additionally, there are two conditions of approval that are included on the 2A. Bison agrees to these conditions of approval, which include updating reference area photos and submitting a Form 4 sundry should Bison use additional waste disposal facilities than those listed on our current waste management plan. Next slide. In conclusion, there was no opposing public comment received on the OGDP. We have siting approval for Weld County, and the director has recommended approval for this location with the implementation of Bison's site-specific BMPs. I'll now turn it over to Kelsey to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Katie. Next slide. To summarize the Cartwright 24 OGDP and request for approval, I'll note again that the 1041 WOGLA permit has been approved by Weld County, creating a vested property right. No comments were submitted on the Form 2A, no formal petitions were filed, and Bison cited the proposed Cartwright 24 location outside of all sensitive receptors, and the director recommends approval. And so with that, we respectfully request approval of the Cartwright 24 OGDP, the Form 2A, and the 3 spacing unit applications. And our team is now open for questions.
All right, if we could drop the screen presentation. Commissioners, the applicant is open for questions. All right, seeing no questions, we move to deliberations. Does anyone desire to start in deliberations? Commissioner Oath?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I just wanted to make a comment. I appreciate the testimony from the operator about the drilling muds and their case for why they believe they're appropriate in this case. So just wanted to make a comment, about those drilling muds and the benefits of them, particularly in the non-attainment area. And, I think as a commission going forward, while we encourage Group 3 muds all the time, we are going forward under our new rules, we'll be requiring that during the ozone season because of the benefits that we see. But given that this particular OGDP at this time is not yet subject to those new requirements. I recognize that, and so wanted to make that comment, though recognize that that is something coming further in the future.
Appreciate that comment, Commissioner Oath. Commissioner Messner?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Oath, that was one of the comments I was going to make as well, is this will be a requirement with the new cumulative impacts rules. So I do want to just make sure too, and I guess this is a question for AAG Boudreau, but I want to make sure that their commitment to utilizing a produced water pipeline is captured in the 2A, and so I don't know if that needs to be I mean, they've testified to that point, but I didn't see that BMP in the 2A. And so I think in the past we've said that if they've testified to it and it's part of the record here, that then that's appropriate. But I don't know if some modification in the future to make sure that what has been testified here and committed to is captured in the 2A. So have that. Otherwise, I think the citing of this is appropriate, and I think it's a approvable application. But I want to
AAG Boudreau.
commitments are made.
Yes, I think if you include that in the motion, excuse me, assuming there's a motion to approve the OGDP, and you include that in the order, then that should be a requirement built into it, even if not included in the 2A. While we're talking about it, I would also note there are two other COAs that Bison has mentioned. So in the motion, assuming there's a motion to approve it, it would also be prudent to specifically reference the two COAs included. Is that sufficient?
Okay. That's helpful. Further deliberative thoughts? Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this application with the conditions of approval that were indicated by AAG Boudreau and the memorialization of the commitment to produced water pipeline takeaway, and that it is captured in the order and therefore the 2A.
Second. Motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. That takes care of docket that ends in 236. We'll take up the next docket in 10 minutes. Let's return at 10 o'clock. The Energy and Carbon Management Commission June 4th business agenda will continue. We now are taking up docket 240800191, another Bison operating application for an OGDP. We start with Mr. Kavanaugh.
Well, thank you, and again for your time today, guys. And good morning again. I wanted to take a few minutes regarding the Weld County WOGLA process here in regards to Bison Forest Oil and Gas Development Plan. On May 8th, 2024, Weld County held a pre-application meeting for the Scorpion Bay 23 location before you today. Attendees included Bison staff, Weld County staff, ECMC, and CPW. The 1041 WOGLA application was received September 25th, 2024. Weld County did not receive any public comments or applications for intervention on the Scorpion Bay 23 location. The 1041 location hearing for the Scorpion Bay 23 was held on December 12th, 2024, and approved by Weld County's hearings officer. The final order was recorded with the Weld County Clerk and Recorder and then published in the Greeley Tribune on January 11th, 2025, which creates a vested property right for this permit. 2A comments were submitted to the ECMC and are included in the director's recommendations. Weld County agrees with the director's recommendations and fully supports the approval of this permit.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Again, appreciate Weld County's participation in our process. Questions for Mr. Kavanaugh? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the applicant. Ms. Weslinki, given that this is the same operator, do you have the same witnesses?
We do.
then we'll just inform those witnesses that they are already sworn in, and I think that'll do. Thanks, Mr. Boudreau, for nodding your head up and down. So let's bring them on board. You can share your screen and we will
Great.
move forward.
Thank you. Looks like we can see the next slide and notes, Bennett. Just give us a few seconds here. We'll get it up and running. Still see the next slide.
How about now?
Still the same view.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is always the hardest part.
Well, Mr. Meyer did a good job last time. He's got it in him.
Nope. Maybe
Same.
Bennett, yes, same. Maybe we could just share it not in full screen mode. Maybe we could make the slides just a little bigger, if commissioners, if you don't object to that, just to keep it rolling.
Sure.
Oh, there it
There you
is.
go.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Magic.
You're good. Thank you. Well, good morning again, commissioners. My name is Kelsey Wazelinki with Jost Energy Law, and with Jamie Jost, we represent Bison 4 Operating LLC in the Scorpion Bay 23 OGDP before you today in docket 2408-00191. Again, we'd like to thank Director Kavanaugh for his remarks today in Weld County for its support and participation in the WOGLA process, and also ECMC staff and the director for their efforts on this OGDP. This OGDP requests that the Commission establish an approximate 1,616.44 acre OGDP consisting of one new oil and gas location, developing one new drilling and spacing unit for the development of 7 total horizontal wells for the Niobrara, Fort Hays, Codell, and Carlisle formations. As stated by Director Kavanaugh, the proposed location is in Weld County, and the 1041 WOGLA permit was approved in December of 2024. The proposed Scorpion Bay location triggers one Rule 304B2 ALA criteria, as it is located within the Pronghorn Winter Concentration Area HPH. Bison will describe its consultation with CPW and the ALA process in the presentation today. Bison will develop the OGDP in one occupation and has committed to several protective BMPs, to name a few: 3-phase pipeline takeaway, the use of a quiet frac fleet to reduce noise, a partial sound wall along the north and eastern edges of the pad during development of the location, Tier 2 dual fuel engines with battery assist for drilling, Tier 4 engines for hydraulic fracturing, Group 2 drilling mud, and the production facility will be connected to line power, and all compression will be electrified. On the spacing side, there are federal minerals within the proposed spacing unit, and Bison agrees to submit a communitization agreement to the BLM at least 30 days prior to the anticipated date of first production. And finally, Bison has complied with all notice requirements for the Scorpion Bay OGDP. No formal petitions were filed and no public comments were received on the Form 2A. I'll turn it over to Katie Gillen to continue the presentation.
Good morning again, Chairman and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks again for your time and attention to hear our application. Just for the record, my name is Katie Gillen. I'm the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and EHS at Bison. I'm here to provide you an overview of the oil and gas development plan for the Scorpion Bay and to answer any questions you may have to the best of my ability. Also present with me today are Ian Hogan, Executive Vice President of Exploration and Geology, and Bennett Meyer, Land Manager at Bison. Next slide. A summary of our permitting timeline is shown here. The 1041 WOGLA pre-application meeting for the location was held May 29th, 2024. CPW and ECMC expressed no opposition to the proposed location. CDPHE was notified but did not participate. The WOGLA for the location was approved on December 12th, 2024, and there was no public comment received. Bison received completeness determination for the OGDP application on February 19th, and the director's recommendation of approval on March 19th. CDPHE consultation pursuant to Rule 309F was not required, and CDPHE did not request consultation. The CPW consultation pursuant to Rule 309E was required due to siting of the location within pronghorn habitat. And Bison completed consultation with CPW on May 24th, 2024. Bison will discuss our BMPs and our consultation later in the presentation. Finally, there was no public comment received on the OGDP application. Next slide. The mineral lands that will be developed from the Scorpion Bay 23 will include all of sections 26, 35, and the north half of section 2. Bison will drill 7 2.5-mile lateral wells north to south. Next slide. We have included a map depicting cultural features under Rule 304B2 to highlight the remote nature of the location and how Bison has sited the location to best avoid impacts. No alternative location criteria were met for this location except for high priority habitat. As noted previously, the location is within the pronghorn winter concentration area, and as such, Bison completed an alternative location analysis with the submittal of this application. The nearest residential building unit is 2,212 feet to the northeast of the location, which can be seen on this map. This is the surface owner for the location, and Bison has an executed SUA with this surface owner. They are supportive of the location and had no concerns. Furthermore, all high occupancy building units, schools, and child care facilities are well over a mile away from the location. The nearest disproportionately impacted community is also a mile away from the location. The proposed Scorpion Bay 23 location provides ideal access to the underlying minerals, as well as existing pipeline operations, and is immediately adjacent to Highway 14, reducing impacts to unfragmented habitat and providing safe access through Weld County Road 83. This location allows us to maximize mineral development and minimize surface impacts. Next slide. In Bison's alternative location analysis, Bison evaluated 6 alternative locations. There was no alternative location feasible to develop minerals outside of high priority habitat, and as such, all alternatives were reviewed to minimize disturbance within high priority habitat. CPW acknowledged that there are no alternatives that would better avoid high priority habitat while also considering other sensitive criteria like proximity to residential building units, safe access to and from the location, siting to reduce significant step outs in order to minimize drilling and completions time on location, and a flat surface area to minimize the surface disturbance required for the pad. CPW also acknowledged and appreciated the siting of the location immediately adjacent to Highway 14, where fragmentation and impacts from noise and truck traffic may already exist. The first alternative location in section 22 does not avoid high priority habitat, and we cannot develop, does not avoid high priority habitat, and we cannot develop the entire DSU from this location, and would result in the need for a second location within high priority habitat. Development of the wells from this location would increase drilling and completions durations in high priority habitat due to the significant step outs which Bison and CPW aim to minimize. Additionally, there was a safety concern with Highway 14 access point for this alternative. The second alternative location in section 24 also did not avoid high priority habitat, and we could not develop the entire DSU from the pad and would require a second location. Hydrology features in the area are closer to this site than the proposed location, and there's a residential building unit approximately 1,400 feet as compared to the proposed location, which is over 2,000 feet away. Alternative 3 in section 35 also does not avoid high priority habitat, and there are 2 residential building units within 2,000 feet, and there is a mapped wetland approximately 30 feet to the north of this location. Additionally, 2.5 miles of pipeline would be required, which would disturb more surface within high priority habitat. Alternative 4 in section 2, again, does not avoid high priority habitat and would require additional surface disturbance of 3.5 miles for additional pipeline that would be required. This location would also require a half-mile step out, which would increase our time on location during the drilling and completions phase. Alternative 5 in section 26 does not avoid high priority habitat and would require longer step outs and increased development time in high priority habitat. Safety concerns also existed with the access point or the Highway 14 access point from this alternative. Alternative 6, again, does not avoid high priority habitat, would also require longer step outs, increasing development time in high priority habitat, and the surface owner was not supportive of this location, and Bison could not obtain an SUA. Next slide. Bison considered key cultural and environmental features to avoid and mitigate impacts when selecting the Scorpion Bay 23 location and access road. The location was selected as it avoids all criteria under Rule 304B2B except for high priority habitat, and Bison was able to minimize impacts by siting along Highway 14, which is also acknowledged by CPW. There are no residential building units, high occupancy building units, schools, or childcare facilities within 2,000 feet, and it is not within a disproportionately impacted community. Bison believes this is an excellent location, and CPW appreciated the siting immediately adjacent to Highway 14. Next slide. The location is in a remote area, zoned agricultural in unincorporated Weld County. The disturbed area during construction will be 16 acres. 6.30 acres will be the remaining surface disturbance after interim reclamation. Access will be off of Weld County Road 83 and Highway 14. Bison has an executed surface use agreement with the surface owner, and the production facility will include 7 new 2.5-mile lateral wells. And there will be oil, gas, and produced water pipeline takeaway from this facility. And the storage tanks will be equipped with a tank vapor capture design, which significantly reduces tank emissions. Next slide. Pending permit approval, Bison plans to develop the location in accordance with the estimated operational timelines shown here. Construction would commence November of 2025. Completions drilling of 2025. Completions in February 2026. Production in March of 2026, followed by interim reclamation. Next slide. During the drilling and completions phase, Bison will implement the following best management practices. Tier 2 dual fuel engines with battery assist will be used during drilling. Bison is over compliant by 42% with the NOx intensity requirements. Tier 4 engines will be utilized for the completions phase, and Group 2 drilling mud will be utilized for this location to reduce drilling times. Bison will use a closed-loop pitless system for drilling and a quiet frac fleet, reducing noise during the completion phase, as well as the other BMPs listed here. Next slide. I'll just briefly summarize these points here. Bison has elected to use Group 2 oil-based mud for this location. Bison believes that oil-based mud is more protective for this location for the following reasons. Oil-based mud results in higher rate of penetration and faster drilling times. Those faster drilling times result in less time on location, reducing impacts of lighting, noise, and truck traffic during the drilling phase. The emissions calculation methodology for both synthetic drilling mud and oil-based drilling mud are the same. So we do not anticipate reduced ozone criteria pollutants from the use of Group 3 drilling muds. However, apologies for that interruption. So we do not anticipate reduced ozone criteria pollutants from the use of Group 3 drilling muds. However, we do anticipate reduced combustion drilling emissions from the faster drilling times. Additionally, the lower mechanical specific energy we see from oil-based mud results in the potential lower fuel usage for the rig engines, and therefore we anticipate lower drilling combustion emissions. Oil-based mud requires less chemical storage and management, and therefore less trucking is required. While oil-based mud has a more pungent odor, there are no residential building units within 2,000 feet, and there are no concerns for odor. Therefore, Bison believes that oil-based mud is more protective for this location. Next slide. Bison has taken a holistic approach to evaluating oil-based mud versus synthetic mud. Bison aims to reduce our non-productive time on location and believes this results in the greatest minimization of impacts during the drilling phase. Bison has seen a savings of 1.27 days of drilling and
Hey,
a 90 report.
Ms. Gillen, you went
Yep.
through this in the last one. I don't know that it's necessary to point by point go through it
Understood.
again.
I can skip this then. Next slide. During the production phase, Bison will implement the following best management practices. The facility will be equipped with oil, gas, and produced water pipelines. We will use a LACT system. The tanks will be equipped with a tank vapor recovery for 100% capture during operations. Continuous emissions will be completed during drilling completions in the first 6 months of production, and line power will be connected to the production facility, and all compression will be electrified. Next slide. Bison consulted on-site with CPW on May 24th, 2024. CPW acknowledged that no alternative location would allow for the development outside of high priority habitat, and thus the alternatives were reviewed to minimize impacts. We discussed alternative locations to further reduce disturbance and reduce the disturbance specifically required for the access road, but no alternative was deemed better. While CPW expressed they preferred bison did not develop during the winter timing step, they acknowledged bison was aiming to avoid development during the ozone season, as the utility provider in the area is unable to provide the power capacity necessary for drilling, electric drilling at this location. CPW also acknowledged that bison aimed to avoid unfragmented and suitable habitat by siting the location next to Highway 14, and that a partial sound wall would be installed during the timing step for drilling and completions activities. CPW calculated a compensatory mitigation amount to offset the potential one-time impacts associated with the drilling and completions phase that would occur during the winter pronghorn timing season. While CPW preferred that the development occur outside of the winter pronghorn step, CPW appreciated the siting of the location immediately adjacent to Highway 14 and the partial sound wall. CPW subsequently calculated a higher indirect mitigation amount, which bison has agreed to. This would allow bison to operate within the timing step. Finally, bison has agreed to the following best management practices: 3-phase pipeline takeway, quiet frac fleet to reduce noise, and then no fencing to prevent the migration, unless later requested by the landowner. Furthermore, we'll develop the DSU in a single occupation. Next slide. In conclusion, there was no opposing public comment received on the application. We have local government siting approval from Weld County. The alternative location analysis was completed for this location, and no other location was deemed more protective. Finally, the director's recommendation and staff concluded that impacts to public health, welfare, and safety would largely be avoided, minimized, and/or mitigated by the successful implementation of bison's BMPs. I'll now turn it over to Kelsey to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Katie. I'll just briefly summarize the Scorpion Bay OGDP and request for approval, and note again that the 1041 WOGLA permit has been approved by Weld County, creating a vested property right. No comments were submitted on the Form 2A, no formal petitions were filed, and the director recommends approval of the OGDP. Bison conducted a detailed ALA and robust consultation with CPW and agrees to several BMPs to avoid, minimize, and mitigate potential adverse impacts. And with that, we respectfully request approval of the Scorpion Bay OGDP, the Form 2A, and the spacing unit application. And our team is now open for questions.
All right. Thanks again. And once again, commissioners, the panel is open for questions. Does anyone have questions? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I've got a bit of a lead into these questions here just to kind of let you know where I'm coming from. I'm sure you'll recall last week that the commission raised questions about Bison's Baja West OGDP that proposed 23 wells over 3 separate locations because it didn't make any hard commitments to stay outside the timing limitations period. for 1202D high priority habitat. But as came out in that discussion, in that OGDP, bison committed to doing their best to stay outside that period in all but one location, the Cloud Break location, stating that some of the operations for that location may of necessity extend into the HPH seasonal timing limitations to prevent work stoppage and remobilization. In the wildlife plan and later in that hearing, it was clarified that it was the operator's intent to allow for unforeseen circumstances if there was timing spillover in other phases and or other locations. And that approach demonstrated, in my opinion at least, an acceptable, albeit not exceptional, effort to work outside of the timing restrictions and then transitioning into minimization and mitigation measures as a contingency plan for really any work that spilled over due to unforeseen circumstances. So that said, turning back to this OGDP, Bison has proposed just one location with 7 wells, and from the get-go proposes to do the majority of the heavily disturbing work, the drilling and completions, deep into the timing limitations period, which CPW has before generally noted becomes more difficult for wildlife as those activities penetrate deeper into the wintering period. The truck traffic associated with these phases is significant, as noted in the application, drilling at 12 trucks a day for up to 70 days, and for completions at 109 trucks a day for up to 40 days, including all of the disturbance of those activities themselves. So, getting closer to my question here, as far as I can tell, no effort was made to avoid drilling and completions within the timing limitations. And I couldn't find any significant explanation of Bison's attempts to first avoid the significant impact to wildlife of working within the timing restrictions period before moving to minimization and mitigation and compensatory mitigation measures. In addition, the OGDP we just heard, which doesn't contain HPH, has construction, drilling, and completions taking place outside of what would be the HPH timing restrictions if there was analogous HPH in that OGDP. So that demonstrates that schedules may have some room for adjustment to avoid working within HPH in the Scorpion Bay standalone location, begging the question in my mind, why not simply flip the timing on the two? During the mission change rulemakings, the commission repeatedly discussed the concern over not wanting to allow a simple pay-to-play approach when adopting the compensatory mitigation approach in Rule 1203. I.e., an operator simply choosing to pay an additional compensatory mitigation amount to work during the period, as opposed to compensatory mitigation being paid to address unavoidable impacts. And just frankly, this appears to me, from the information that I have in front of me, to be really the most stark example of a pay-to-play approach that I've seen since the mission change rulemaking. So getting to my questions, I really have 2 major concerns. Clearly, the heavy work within the timing restrictions period, and then the access road cutting a half a mile in from Weld County Road 83 rather than accessing the pad directly from the adjacent State Highway 14. So my first question would be, can you discuss what efforts were made to avoid drilling and completing this location within the timing restrictions period, and why that approach was not deemed viable?
Certainly. So as I mentioned in my testimony, there is no option for utility line power for this location during the drilling phase. And so Bison will use Tier 2 dual fuel engines. And so Bison, as stated in our consultation with CPW, as acknowledged by CPW in their written consultation for this application, that Bison is aiming to avoid the ozone season for development of this pad. So, commissioners, we had to balance the objectives here of operating within the STIP and avoiding the ozone season. Second, we did cite the location immediately adjacent to Highway 14, where there's already impacts from traffic and noise, and CPW also acknowledged that in the consultation and made reference to it in their written consultation and appreciated that citing. They did ask for us to move the location closer to Weld County Road 83, but that would result in insufficient area to allow trucks to enter the location safely. And would, if we were to provide access immediately off of Highway 14, would require further road construction and development, which we see as more significant impacts, more surface disturbance, more impacts to the location. So we believe we have taken an approach of evaluating and trying to avoid the high priority habitat, but keeping in mind ozone season. So I think I'll just stop there. And
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Ackerman, if I may, I'm sorry.
Please go ahead, Ms. Wasilink.
I was just going to add one additional point is that in the CPW consultation letter and in the phases of operation that were presented today, construction will take place outside of that season in November of 2025. And then the majority of drilling will also occur before January 1st. Therefore, as acknowledged in the CPW consultation letter, that the majority of drilling will also be outside of that timing stipulation.
Thank you, Ms. Wasilink. I read that a little bit different in CPW's letter. I read, however, the majority of the drilling and all of the completions will occur during this unfavorable season, meaning the timing restrictions period. So from what I could tell in the drilling schedule, construction would begin in November 2025. That would take about 30 days. And then drilling would begin sometime in December 2025 or January 2026, which would take 42 to 70 days. The mean seems to skew towards being inside those timing limitations period, and then completions taking place within, deeply within that period. And so I'm a little confused there. Can you clarify a little bit further if they do intend to do drilling mostly outside of that period?
Thank you, Commissioner. And Ms. Gillen, maybe you could answer that.
yeah, certainly. Yes, most of drilling will occur outside of the STIP in the month of December. So construction of the pad will occur outside of the Pronghorn STIP. The vast majority of drilling will occur in the month of December outside of the Pronghorn STIP.
Okay. So you don't expect it to take 42 to 70 days to do the drilling?
There may be some days of drilling within January, but we aim to have the vast majority of drilling completed before the month of January.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but not making a commitment to do so. Is that correct?
We're unable to make a firm commitment on that.
Thank you. And then getting to the point that you made about the ozone season, now we just heard a different OGDP, and I don't believe that was electric drilling in that OGDP. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
We are working to obtain line power for all of those locations. So that was the intent and plan for those locations. We were unable to commit just because the utility provider couldn't give us a firm commitment, but we're feeling better about that location and moving towards having power available for it versus the true capacity limitations we have for this pad.
Thank you for that clarification. Then one further question along that same lines, because this is a standalone location and isn't really compiled with other locations, why are you unable to start a little earlier as is customary and try to keep those activities outside of the timing limitations periods?
It's pending the permit approval, so the OGDP, in time for the Form 2s to be approved in a timely manner. And, we can't just pause our rig schedule. We have drilling commitments, contractual drilling commitments, and can't just take gaps in our schedule to meet this. So we've made our best effort to schedule those operations to occur outside of this timing step, keeping all of those things in mind.
Thank you. I appreciate your responses to my question. I think you've largely addressed my second question, which was my concern with cutting a half-mile road from Weld County Road 83 laterally into this location, fragmenting habitat, rather than simply accessing it off of State Highway 14. My understanding is that you believe that will be more disturbing. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? Why would that be a higher disturbance?
Highway 14 would require, I use the right terminology here, but a turning lane and a slow down lane to access the pad. So Highway 14 would require expanded construction, which is long-term permanent disturbance.
Adjacent to the road there, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And in your discussions with CPW, did you have discussions with them, significant discussions about avoiding being within the timing period, or just simply state to them that that was not possible for you?
We did. We had significant conversations with them both on location and through the process about trying to avoid the timing step, evaluating our rig contract schedules, utility line power access to the location, and balancing both operating within the STIP and the ozone timing period. So we did work very closely with CPW and believe that CPW has reviewed and approved both our development schedule and also, higher compensatory mitigation fees, which Bison has agreed to pay should, our operations occur during the timing step. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gillen. I appreciate your responses as well as yours, Ms. Wazelinski, and Mr. Chair. That's all I have at this moment.
Others with questions? All right, the HPH and wildlife does seem to be the issue du jour of this matter. So thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for those questions. Do you want to start with deliberation?
I sure do. Thank you. I think it's clear that I do have some concerns with this application. There are good things in this application. I commend the operator for a number of things that they've pointed out, the BMPs that they worked out with CPW, the approach that they're taking, and I recognize that a lot goes into these applications and a lot of considerations move into these applications. That said, the Oil and Gas Act does include in the definition of minimize adverse impacts the mitigation hierarchy by directing the commission to first avoid impacts and then seek to minimize unavoidable impacts, and finally to mitigate those unavoidable and inverse impacts. You can find that on the statement of basis purpose pages 172 and 173. Also on page 172, it reads of the basis and purpose statement, it reads, in implementing the clarified mitigation hierarchy, the commission chose to define, avoid adverse impacts, minimize adverse impacts, mitigate adverse impacts, and unavoidable adverse impacts. The commission believes the additional clarity provided by these definitions, and this is important, will assist stakeholders in understanding how the commission will review proposed oil and gas operations. Importantly, the commission defined the term unavoidable adverse impacts to articulate how it would address those residual impacts that remain even after the commission has considered the opportunity and ability to avoid impacts and has included site-specific measures to minimize impacts. From our 100 series definitions, avoid adverse impacts, it means to differentially select alternative locations, practices, or methods for oil and gas operations based on site-specific circumstances so that those operations will not cause quantifiable direct, indirect, or cumulative adverse impacts to the potentially affected resource. Avoidance may include a no action alternative. And throughout the mission change rulemaking, the Commission revised its rules to emphasize the importance of planning for impacts, which includes consideration of identifying impacts and then applying the mitigation hierarchy to reduce those impacts. During the mission change rulemaking hearings, the Commission repeatedly discussed the concern over not wanting to allow a simple pay-to-play approach when adopting the compensatory mitigation in 1202D. I would also note that in wildlife, it was represented that wildlife was in favor of this location, and ultimately they were. They did receive considerable pushback on a number of items, including that they asked why the location couldn't be directly accessed from State Highway 14. And you heard some answers here today that were similar to the answers given to CPW. Accordingly, they asked why the location required a half-a-mile long access road. Again, the operator responded they needed sufficient road length for the high amount of truck backup that would take place in there. You heard of the number of trucks, and that the landowner preferred the pad in the proposed location and to minimize the earthwork. CPW asked if the operator could rework the location itself into a rectangle so that the longer portion would be parallel to State Highway 14 versus extending farther north, and the operator declined on that as well. So I don't want to give the impression that I got that it was a fully, simpatico cooperative consultation. I do recognize that CPW ultimately approved this approach, but I think it was based on the notion that Bison stated it was simply unable to work outside of the timing limitations period, and CPW took that at face value. In discussing the schedule for the majority of drilling operations to take place outside the timing period, you would have to have construction begin on November 1. It simply states sometime in November. So if it took place beginning on November 30th, almost the entirety of drilling would take place within the timing restrictions period. So that's an unknown, and we have to treat it as such as given the schedule that's before us. To me, the mean skews towards the majority of drilling taking place within the timing limitations period and the entirety of completions. So I want to emphasize that I think this is an approvable application with some adjustments in timing. The application, because of the timing issue, does not appear to me to properly implement the mitigation hierarchy, and I really do believe it's adopting a glaring pay-to-play approach by beginning from the perspective of conducting a considerable portion of the drilling phase and the entirety of the completions phase deep within the timing limitations period, asking CPW for mitigation amounts for working within and outside of those timing limitations periods, and simply deciding it was more cost-effective and convenient to work within them. The definition of pay to play. I'm not in favor of this application moving forward in its current form. I don't feel it properly implemented the mitigation hierarchy as required to protect wildlife. Again, I do recognize a number of positive traits and BMPs associated with the application, and I believe I would be in favor of it if drilling and completions are adjusted forward to take place largely outside of the HPH timing limitations period, understanding that some degree of adjustment and compensation and mitigation may be necessary for unplanned extension into the timing limitations period.
Thank you for the deliberative thoughts, Commissioner Ackerman. The applicant desires to possibly address that. Ms. Weslinky.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. We really do appreciate your comments on this OGDP, and also acknowledging that CPW did have no objections to the wildlife components, which I think is important. But considering that and considering the timing of approval of this matter, briefly consulting with Bison in the interim, I believe there can be a commitment to construct and drill fully outside of the timing stipulation, and in addition include completions. But I do want Ms. Gillen to confirm that schedule with some flexibility. Obviously, there's items outside of Bison's control to make that full commitment, but I think if there's a best effort standard to complete those construction drilling and also perhaps completions, which Ms. Gillen will confirm, perhaps we can start with that.
Ms. Wasiliki, don't want to catch you short. Do you want to spend a little time with your client ahead of them testifying on this point? Happy to give you a little 5 minutes or something.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Why don't we take a 5 minute or perhaps 10:55?
Yeah, let's come back at 10:55. Commissioners, I hope everybody's okay with that. We will rejoin at 10:55.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back. Energy and Carbon Management Commission, June 4th. It is 10:55, returning to docket 2408-00191. Ms. Wasiliki, I believe you were going to take time to visit with your client. If you'd like to provide us additional perspective, please do so.
Great. Thank you very much. And Ms. Gillen has a few remarks.
Yep. I think first of all, we appreciate Ackerman's discussion on this matter. However, we disagree for the record that best efforts were not made to avoid the timing step. And we did complete a comprehensive consultation with CPW. However, Bison will complete all construction and drilling outside of the timing step, and we will commit to this. We will make our best effort to commence completions outside of the timing step, but we cannot commit to that. This all assumes that our drilling permits are approved in a timely manner, and we would greatly appreciate the support of permitting staff to make that happen. We believe that all of this aligns with the siting of the location immediately adjacent to Highway 14 and is protective of high priority habitat.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Ms. Gillum, and I want to thank the operator for working on this issue and for your quick response to this concern and recognize your objections and also your commitments that you've made here. I do want to be clear to those listening in the future that a proposal to pay compensatory mitigation to work within HPH timing limitations with no significant discussion of attempts to avoid first, I as one commissioner will likely scrutinize for a potential pay-to-play type approach. Due to the complexities of oil and gas work, and according to the tenor of our mission change rulemaking discussions, the Oil and Gas Act, and our regulations, there is leeway to sometimes work within those timing limitations period with appropriate minimization and mitigation measures when it's impossible or more impactful to avoid those periods. In particular, I recognize as appropriate a commitment to do all construction, drilling, and completions work outside of timing limitations with a contingency plan that some may spill over. And I believe that in that case, and with additional BMPs to protect when they do spill over, I believe that in that case, that is in accordance with the mitigation hierarchy. I think that that's an appropriate approach to, and what was considered and discussed by the commission in adopting the compensatory mitigation regulations. And I appreciate the flexibility on the part of this operator and understand that significant behind the scenes work and shifting will have to be done in order to comply with that commitment. So I am, given that adjustment, in favor of this application. Mr. Chair, I do want to note that I do have some concerns still with the access road coming in from the side road. I find it to be a reasonable argument that there will be permanent work that's definitely more expensive, but also more disruptive along State Highway 14. I find it unfortunate that it can't be accessed from the directly adjacent highway, but can reasonably accept that discussion and advise the operator to keep that access road as close to State Highway 14 as they can to avoid fragmentation. And again, thank you for your work on this in quick fashion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. My deliberative thoughts are, one, with regard to the access road and the traffic, that is to some extent, a local government consideration and look toward the local government in terms of what they think about that. With regard to the wildlife component, really appreciate the work there on that, Commissioner Ackerman, and appreciate the applicant's response on that as well. I do just note from this commissioner's perspective and for the record that when we're dealing with potential new oil and gas development permits and we're trying to address issues of not allowing drilling during ozone season, there's kind of conflict there with high priority habitat and timing stipulations. And we do have within our rules the compensatory mitigation sort of approach. And so I just sort of acknowledge that conflict, that we're trying to achieve a lot of really good goals in the work we're doing. And so I'll just leave it at that. But I too believe this application with the renewed commitments from the operator on the timing stipulations is approvable. So want to thank folks for those thoughts as well. Others with deliberative thoughts? Commissioner Messner?
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for bringing up this topic and providing reasonable and clear interpretation of the rules. I think that as they were intended to be applied. I think that your wildlife background gives you the unique expertise to be able to provide those comments and do that analysis, and really appreciate the adherence to, I think, what we had committed to during the mission change rulemaking, and what ultimately I think is required for us to apply per the act is the mitigation hierarchy of avoid, minimize, and mitigate. I would agree that there was a struggle here, at least in my mind, with the applicant truly applying the avoid first. I understand the conflict between the ozone season and any wildlife timing stipulations. And if this operator was concerned about the ozone season, I think other technologies may be considered in the applications that we're seeing from this operator, but that doesn't seem to be a priority in the applications that at least I've reviewed. And so I think that the avoidance of the timing stipulation, and my interpretation of it, had more to do with economic and schedule feasibility than anything else. And so I appreciate that the operator has made a commitment and an adjustment to predominantly stay out of that timing stipulation. And the conversations that I've had with CPW, if there's continuous operations outside of the timing stipulations that tend to slightly bleed into the timing stipulations, then that is preferred, because that gives the species the opportunity to make a decision whether or not to habitate that area, because they've already seen the activity that's going there. And so I think that this is a reasonable alternative, and appreciate that the operator has chosen to allow to shift this schedule to allow that to happen. And so I think to the road piece, at least my reading of that, I understand the additional impacts associated with that. I do think that there was some requirements either from CDOT or from the county as far as how and where those access points could be accessed. And that is in many ways a Department of Transportation or a local government piece. And so I think that's a reasonable solution to have that secondary road with the pad adjacent to it. And I also want to note that CPW is often put into a difficult situation in these consultations, and not often face significant pushback from an operator, but rather are working cooperatively with CPW to try to find solutions. And I would hope that this relationship with CPW and operators continues to be strong and that CPW's being respected in their consultation. And so with that, I think that with the adjustments, one other point I want to make is around the term best efforts. Best efforts is a legal term, and I think it's important that we follow through with these best efforts with the intent of what that word is from a legal standpoint, and not it's not just I'm going to try, right? And so that's just a point that that term best efforts is in there specifically. But I do think that with the adjustments, it's an approvable application. Appreciate the modifications that have been made here at hearing, and thanks for my listening to my deliberative thoughts.
Others with deliberative thoughts? Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioners Ackerman and Messner and Chair Robbins for kind of starting us off here. I'll be brief. I do agree with Chair Robbins and Commissioner Messner about the road. I think generally this is something that's going to go to the local government and to CDOT. Obviously, we do have a say if we believe that road traffic is going to be. I know we previously had this. I believe it was with the same operator. Concerns about roads and traffic being near schools and timing, et cetera. That's obviously something that we're attuned to and concerned about. However, I think a lot of the changes themselves are going to be left up to, again, the local government and CDOT. And so I'm going to defer to them the majority of the time. And so I do think that the approach taken with the road is appropriate here. I appreciate Commissioner Ackerman's input about the avoidance piece. I do think this is appropriate. The application is appropriate. I do appreciate the applicant's agreement to try and shift that time forward. I do appreciate the work done for that. And as Chair Robbins said, we obviously do face a lot of difficult decisions, especially and operators face difficult decisions as well, especially as we get into more of a focus away from drilling during the ozone season to try and make sure that we have that balance between protecting wildlife and protecting public health safety as well. And I do appreciate that CPW did provide their sign off on this as well. And so I do take that into account. But again, I do appreciate the applicant's willingness to shift that time frame for it. I do think that, especially with that change, this is an approvable application. I'll be voting in favor.
Others with deliberative thoughts? Commissioner Oath.
Thanks. I just will express my appreciation for my fellow commissioners' thoughts and echo the comments about the importance of applying the mitigation hierarchy in this manner. It's certainly appropriate, and appreciate the modifications that were made accordingly. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Commissioner Ackerman, can I look to you for a motion?
You bet, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I move to approve this application as presented and amended, with the calendar being amended so that construction and drilling are to take place entirely outside the HPH timing restrictions, with best efforts to complete outside of those restrictions, allowing for spillover with the BMPs as previously noted by the operator. Is that okay with the AG and with the operator? Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Boudreau?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that condition of approval makes sense, and I think it's an appropriate inclusion in the motion. I did have one clarifying question on exactly what's being included regarding mitigation fees. On the Form 2A, there's an indication that the direct impact habitat mitigation fee is $45,822.60. And I just want to clarify that number doesn't change regardless of whether the operations spill into the high priority habitat season.
And I would, Mr. Chair, that I believe that that would be a recalculation of mitigation fees between the operator and CPW.
And that's part of your motion.
Yes, please.
Ms. Wesselinki, are you comfortable with that?
I have one clarification. Commissioner Ackerman, I believe the commitment is to commence completions outside of the timing stip instead of conduct.
Yes. What I heard from Ms. Gillen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that they were going to try to complete the completions phase outside the timing period, but we're not able to make a hard commitment to do so, and that there may be spillover into the timing period. And Ms. Gillen can correct me if I'm wrong there.
I said commence, not complete, but I do think we're saying basically the same thing. So.
Okay, thank you. I'd have to go back and listen. I thought the commitment was to do your best to complete outside, and there may be spillover. You're saying simply that it would be commenced by December 31?
Commence operations, yeah, before.
And
But I do think, again, I think we're saying the same thing. We can't agree to a B&P written on the 2A that says we would conduct completions outside of the STIP. That's just the point of clarification there.
Okay, so let's see if I can maybe clarify just a little bit in my own, because I'm not sure we're saying the same thing, but I do think that the intent may be the same, and I might be getting some of the verbiage wrong there. And so the intent is to commence completions outside of the winter timing stipulations period, and best efforts to complete those completions outside of that timing stipulation period, acknowledging that there may be spillover into the timing's limitation period. Is that better stated?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Wazalski, for helping keep me there. So I appreciate that.
thank you. And I'll just make one other plug. That does assume that permitting is able to issue the drilling permits on a more expedited manner to make this schedule happen, which I think is included in the best effort standard.
Thank you. And so, Mr. Chair, if I can restate that motion, or maybe just amend it to include that conversation. Is that reasonable, Councillor Boudreau?
Yes.
All right. Second. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Wesselinki, and thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for your input here. I think it's helpful for operators as they proceed forward with the various goals that we're trying to meet as we move forward with our GDPs in HPH and outside of ozone. I think that was a helpful discussion. Ms. Wesselinki, thank you very much. We are done with your docket. Thank you to staff for getting us to this place. And with that, I would move that we adjourn because we've got no further business.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor must signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. See you next time.